agony of defeat.
Madison, great ball around the corner, Penasini, he beats them all! Junior Polar out wide, bumped away from Trindle, Sharks coming through, none of them can hold this!
Alrighty, we are live. Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host John, also known as 4020, and joining me to break down what I can describe, I think fairly as an incredibly frustrating game is my good mate, Sixties. We were busy today, mate. Did a fantastic little pre-game function with the boys from Talking Para and Adam in the name of a couple of good charities, including the Parramatta Foundation and Talk to Me Bro. But that segued into or dovetailed into the game against the Bulldogs, and I might need some mental health after that, mate. The officials, well, they've got me going batshit crazy right now.
Yeah, mate, you're right. It was a great function earlier today for the Eels Foundation and Talk to Me Bro, and shout out to Adam from Talking Para podcast, who did a great job in getting that first event, that first bowling event off the ground. That was at Kicks at Parramatta Leagues Club. Just happens to be also one of our wonderful sponsors. So shout out to Para Leagues and also to Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta for their wonderful support of the Cumberland Throw and our podcast. John, can you just hit the stinger to start off with?
All right.
You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
Yeah, I could just spam that button the entire podcast and probably some.
Yeah, hit it.
Fans,
just
mate.
hit it
Yeah,
again.
Exactly.
Just hit it again.
We need a proper super rap tantrum today, mate. I don't think Jason Ryles has got it in, but I would love to see the big man tee off on the officials today, because that was unacceptable. And yes, the Parramatta Eels made mistakes, although I think that a lot of that was facilitated on the back of fatigue in the second half in particular. But we saw the inequities of this code right there. Two teams being officiated in two very different ways. And look, even if the game had been caught evenly, the Bulldogs are such a good team that it would have taken us an almighty effort to still beat them. But we were in that to our eyeballs deep into the second half, despite a string of ludicrously bad calls. Like, we're talking blatant forward passes, blatant knock-ons, completely different rucks being officiated, and all this happening consistently set to set, tackle to tackle. And again, the Bulldogs are too good a team to be given that advantage and not leverage it. And we saw that in the final, 60. The kick out goes over in the 60th minute, followed by Hayes in the 68th, and then Galvin on the 73rd. And that was the difference in the end.
Okay, so let me just say straight off the bat, the Eels need to look in the mirror for completion rates, because it just was unacceptable today. As you said, there's perhaps reasons for that, but there were errors that were made. There was something like 10 or 12 errors made by our backs.
Yeah,
today.
Zack Lomax, Will Penasini. I think Shawn Russell was done for one early in the game because he didn't pay attention. We got pushed, to be fair. He was actually shielding Adokar for the catch, the kick, but you go back and watch, he got pushed into the ball by a Bulldogs chaser, which sometimes that's a penalty, but not for Parramatta. And unfortunately, our backs, they tried the shoulder low because the Eels were playing light today. No Luca Moretti, no Ryan Madison. We're not 100% the reasons on why the Eels had to go with those late changes, 60s, but we were playing a small bench. Jordan Samrani, Matt Dury, they were the quote-unquote bigs on the bench, and they're not bigs. Like, they give you a lot of effort and a lot of impact, obviously in the right framework, but they're not bigs. And
No.
The outside backs tried to shoulder the load, and unfortunately, the game script, it was a difficult one. And with the Dogs, aided by those calls, aided by untimely errors by the Eels, they were able to really tee off on the outside backs and get to work on them defensively. And again, the Dogs, if that had been caught evenly, it would have been a fierce contest regardless, and it's not to say that we would have won, because Canterbury that good a team. But I just, as a Parramatta fan, as a neutral watching other games, you just want a fair contest called. And this game was called so bad that even the neutrals on Reddit, which is traditionally not a breeding ground for positive Parramatta stuff, were calling it out. And that is a testament, get it right, to just how rough it was out there. And I'm not going to, like you said, we're not going to say we're all perfect. We made plenty of errors, but I think we were good enough to be right into that contest with a fair game, and we weren't given a fair game.
John, there's, as I said, I'm acknowledging the fact that the Eels need to look in the mirror for what they didn't do well today, and in the end, with fatigue, the Eels' attack became a shambles. The errors were really ordinary errors in the end.
When we were chasing the points, we tried to shift the ball, but the fatigue had set in, and we just weren't in the right position. Zach wanted to kick at one point, but Moses played to the pass, and that led to Zach being out of position to scramble back and try to get the ball. It happens. We fired some good shots there earlier in the game. Again, like the Penrith match last week, I think the Dogs defended outstanding. Both teams had their opening scores on the back of crazy intercepts. There is conjecture that...
Well, talk to me about that first.
There is conjecture that Matt Burton might not have been onside. He was playing... He was playing halfback from the scrum, so he is entitled to be closer to the ball, but he was on the ball carrier very quickly in that one. And I dare say that if you go back and have a look at the replay, he was probably offside. And I'm going to use probably in a very facetious manner.
John, I'll ask you this question. When, apart from that New South Wales Cup game at Ringrose Park, when I went nuts at the ref at halftime, when there were 2 intercepts off the scrum base, and I think it was Canterbury against us on that day.
Yeah.
When do you see an intercept off the scrum? When? Because the refs are so quick to call offside off the scrum. You see it with those penalties now all the time.
You're right.
Where they get a chance of setting a scrum again or having a penalty. And, of course, a lot of teams go to set the scrum again so that they can maybe end up with a sin bin if there's another penalty. But the refs are all over teams being offside from the scrum.
Burton, well, he had the golden touch today. He had a good game independently of any bad calls, but was it Sutton that was the referee? Because he thought that he could do no wrong because he had the intercept. There was a blatant knock-on in front of the posts where he quite literally pulled the ball towards Parramatta's goal line. Junior Barlow and Mitchell Moses just pointing at it saying, he's pulled it, he's knocked on. And no, play on. And then Fox Sports had the gall when, or maybe it was a separate play, but there was one sequence of events where the Dogs got away with a blatant error. Eels got the ball back, and that led to the Will Penasini knock-on that was challenged and deemed to be inconclusive. Fox Sports and Brandy Alexander had the gall to say that the karma was served for the Bulldogs, that they got the ball back. Like, just tell me that you're not playing to a script in the commentary there that you want the Dogs to win. Like, Jesus. Yeah, Gerard Sutton. Thank you, Chris Hill. Thanks, mate.
Yeah. How often today was the commentary like that? I'm going to ask you.
The amount of times that Fox played the Matty Johns Galvin bit, and I saw people in chat were having some fun with it before, and it was very fair. Like, tell me that the game didn't want this result. Bulldogs back on top of the table. The new boy, him scoring is obviously just an independent of any officiating. That was just a good sequence of play from the Bulldogs. Jacob Kiros had been offloading all game, but the game got what the game wanted today. And if the Eels had won, it would have been spoiling the party, because you just look at the Fox coverage. You look at the way the game was called from Voss and Alexander. Voss was reveling in this one. And you look at how the game was called, and the Eels would have definitely upset the script. And look, the game wasn't fixed, but it is hard not to be cynical when you have that many bad calls go against the team that is the underdog, even though they're not the Bulldogs, they're the underdogs in this one, and against the table-topping feel-good story in the Bulldogs that just got their shiny new toy signed for this game.
John, we'll give some credit to the Bulldogs. What was their completion rate in the end? It was in the 90s, was it?
Let's pull that up for you, because look, the Dogs played fantastic. It was exactly 90%, 47 of 52. They had so much ball. They were over 10 minutes plus in time of possession in this game. That is crazy.
And John, remember when we did our preview at the event today, I said to you that a key part of the Bulldogs' success this year is the advantage that they get in possession.
Yeah, they would make mistakes. They would they're actually back of the cab in terms of their completion rates. They are not an upper bracket completion rate team, but as you pointed out in our preview, and we didn't record it, was just house mics, but the Dogs dominate the both possession, time of possession splits. And
Yeah.
if you're not completing your sets, the one situation where it's not okay, but at least it's decent to be doing it in is when you're dominating time of possession and obviously field position too. And we saw that tonight.
Yeah. So and so just to clarify that stat, they're high for total number of completions, but also high for total number of incomplete sets.
Yes.
And it's because their completion rate as a rate is fine. It's just they have that much possession that they can complete more sets, and they're actually able to get away with more incompletions because they actually have such a high number of sets that they have per game. Now, how does that come about? Well, if you look at a game like today, the Eels gave them possession. The referee gave a lot of 6 agains to them.
Well, that was one of the things that killed me, Craig, was in the second half, Eels couldn't buy a whistle until the Dogs got that nice little 2-score lead, 12 points clear, and suddenly penalty 6 again. And the whistle came to life for Parramatta. And just, it's, again, tells a lot about the story of that game, that the Bulldogs were able to just suffocate us and tee off in the ruck and slow us down. And again, that they defended strongly. And they have some of those things that I would be complaining about in the game, they would have been entitled to because it was a good tackle. But the Eels were consistently caught out of the ruck, and if they weren't, they were penalised very quickly. And until that game opened up for the Dogs, we didn't get a whistle. And, against a team as good as Canterbury, with a transitional team like Parramatta, who they played good today. The Eels played, it wasn't pretty in terms of the completions, but the guts was there. Defensively, they really stuck it out there until the very end where the Dogs got a chance to open it up with some second-phase football. And I know it's small solace to any fan watching or listening to this, but the reality is that the Dogs put 50 or 60 on the Parramatta Eels at the start of the season if we'd played this way. And funnily enough, the 2 times we played the Dogs, we actually aimed up in defense. But I am so tired of having to fight against the officials as much as the opposition. And when we were premiership contenders, and people can argue whether we were or not, we went to a grand final in 22, and I would argue from 19 to 22, particularly 21 and 22, we were legitimate contenders. Never did the Eels have this whistle. We still fought for our cause and were lucky to get the 50-50s. But Canterbury is the feel-good story this year, and suddenly the whistle's going their way. At least in the context of this game it was. Maybe Dogs fans will contend that it's different. But I'm just so tired of preconceived ideas for a game shaping how the outcome of the game should be. Just call a game on its merits, please.
You're not suggesting that there's a referee tip sheet, are you?
Oh, no, never. Even though and look, Bill Harrigan is a long time removed from being the head of the officials, but it is hard to believe that system or a similar system is not still in place, because teams get coached out by the referees. Like they're calling out individual habits and traits, and they're officiating to preconceived notions, it feels like, instead of saying that this was a high tackle or that wasn't a high tackle. Like, I don't know. I can't say any more without getting really aggressively flustered about it, I guess, in terms of swearing and just devolving into a complete madman. But Mitchell Moses got penalised from in front for hitting the ball. We had a shoulder charge. We had multiple shoulder charges against our boys, where we've seen it before, that if you don't make a proper attempt to wrap, you get penalised. Only one of them got called. Max King didn't get the arm around. He had the arm out. He didn't get it around, though. That's a shoulder charge. Isaiah Yongi was close to being shoulder charged on a kick return. I think that one was actually okay. But, just... And
look, I'll acknowledge, I think the Dogs' sin binning was a bit soft. Look,
that one Dogs fans could feel aggrieved by, but that is a function of going back to what happened to Lachlan Ilias, was it last year at South Sydney, where in reserve grade someone ploughed for his kicking leg, and since that point they've made a real focus that if you do not make an attempt to tackle, and he did not make an attempt to tackle, he just ran through his leg, you'll get penalised. I don't know if it was a sin bin, but that was the one really bad call against it. Oh, really bad. The one call that Dogs fans could argue about. I think it was a penalty at the very least. But look, I don't want to waste too much energy complaining about the referees, because has Jason Ryles had his press conference, guys? Obviously we're recording here, so I haven't got it up in chat.
John, just humour me. Hit the stinger again. We have to hit the stinger again. because it's.
You cannot be serious.
Yeah, and I will maintain, I will die on this hill that until a Parramatta coach wants to stand up and have a crack at the officials, and not do it every week. Don't become a whiner, but I don't see how it's going to change, because we've been a good team. We've been a borderline great team. That if it weren't for the Penrith Panthers, we would have been very likely a premiership champion at one point. But,
John,
yeah,
it's been said to me before, the Eels, and we complained about it, or the last couple of years since the set restarts have come in, the six again.
Restart matter, Jesus.
Yeah, that the Eels have worked hard to not give away set restarts for ruck infringements to the point that they gave away play the ball speed in every match. Like you'd see that the Eels would be quick off the opposition team, and the opposition team would lay over the Eels team, and so that we would always have a slower play the ball speed that would be there. And we argued till we were blue in the face that there is no advantage in doing that, because the refs, if they're not pulling up the opposition for slowing it up, but then we're allowing a fast play the ball speed, and then if there's ever a play the ball where it's slower than the fast ones, we were getting pinged, even though that play the ball speed might have even been slower than what the opposition was allowing. If it was measurably, as far as the refs were concerned, slower than what we would usually allow, we'd get pinged for it. So I'm sick and tired of the different interpretation around the ruck or the 10 metres that seems to be there between two teams in the same game. And ostensibly, I could not see any difference between the two teams today, and yet one team was pinged like double what the other team was pinged. It was tough. But look, we'll come back to it. It may not have, I can't point the finger and say this is why the Eels lost, because the Bulldogs won because they did certain things really, really well. They defended well. They completed exceptionally well. Their second phase play was incredible today, and they haven't been playing a lot of second phase play this season, right? But they certainly pulled it out against us.
Difficult conditions, and they hit the mark pretty consistently, especially Kiraz, who had a great game.
And the other thing they did well, John, was as fatigue set in, they just hit in behind our ruck. They just, it was relentless the way they were hitting in behind there.
You had Crichton, you had Burton. Obviously, Kurt Mann made a fall out of Jermaine Hopwood, who I'm going to talk about in a minute, because when that round 16 team list, it'll be 16 when the Eels take the field again, comes out, if Jermaine's there, I'm going to have a real big complaint, mate, because I know who was it in chat that's been up Will Penasini's tree, and I'm okay if Will got dropped. I could live with that. I wouldn't be complaining about that. I'm equally be okay if Ryles gives him another game or two to get it right in first grade, but if he got dropped, I'm fine. But Jermaine Hopwood is actively harming this team right now. He is good for 1 to 2 brain-dead errors a game and at crucial moments. And he is not bringing enough, if anything, really, when you look at his production with the ball in hand to warrant his spot. And
you don't think defensively that he warrants his spot, John?
My problem with
because the other thing is too, like with everything, you have to say who will you bring in his place, and we've got a real issue with forwards unavailable.
I would rather play light than play Jermaine Hopwood right now. And defensively, I've heard the argument defensively, because you look at his tackle numbers, they are very good. The problem is that it's lies and damn statistics. If you go back and watch the games where he's had a lot of great defensive efforts on paper, there's been a crucial miss almost every game. Being slow, getting back the marker is something I've made a point of in the podcast this year. And today we saw he wouldn't have even been charged for the missed tackle on Kurt Mann because he whiffed him completely. So that wouldn't go down in the record books, but he got beaten embarrassingly easily by Kurt Mann there. And so Josh is in chat saying, missed 2 tackles out directly to tries tonight. Yeah, he's not good with 4 out the ball. Agreed, mate. I would rather play Matt Dory directly there and bring Walker in off the bench if Ryles wants to persist with throwing Walker in as that main but rotation lock forward. I would rather play. I know they weren't available this week, but I'd play Woody or Tony Matteoli. I'd play one of the guys like Brock Parker or Ken Kalachi at this point, 60s. Someone that's going to come in and at least have a crack and do something, and not with the sole mission statement. Whoever is playing, whether it's for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, do not drop the ball, do not give away a stupid penalty. Just go out there, run the ball, and tackle. And Jermaine can't even give us that at the moment. It's really unfortunate because he's gone from being such a bright, like, future building piece,
origin level player,
player, to a shadow. Yeah, Charlie Geimer, exactly, Chris. Charlie Geimer could come in easily and do that job. Start him at lock forward, rotate him with Dylan Walker. You can redeploy Charlie through the middle on the edges if you need to. You can't have guys like both Will and Jermaine hurting your team actively the way they are. If you're going to keep one, it would be Will 100%, because I think at least Will, I know tonight was a bit tough for him because of the game script, but Will's been banging out 150 metres a game most weeks. So at least you're getting that from him. We even saw a nice little pass to Zack Lomax this week. He got the ball out there.
Yep.
So he worked on that part of his game. But, yeah, Jermaine, and the worst part is that they are stupid errors. Like, we're talking getting up and dropping the ball squirting out from the ruck with, like, no assistance from the defender, just being dropped cold. Zack Lomax had one of those errors today, and he was killing himself for it. Jermaine's good for, like, 1 or 2 of them a game. And that is, we're a team that is battling with, not for a lack of effort and even lack of talent. We've seen class, but we are a team that needs every advantage you can get right now to secure important wins to keep us off the bottom of the ladder and give us an unlikely chance at getting into finals contention. And chat's popping off here. A lot of great things. I mean, obviously Sam Tuivasa, if he was healthy, would be in the mix, but if Matto's good, you can throw him back in there. Luca Moretti, I'm not sure what the injury context is, but hopefully he's back coming out of the bye. But
is it might be a facial, something facial? So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we have to get an update from that on the club hopefully on Tuesday. I know it's not going to be teamless Tuesday for the NRL, but I'm hoping that they still put out an injury report. I'm just quickly having again. Do the Cup play next week? Are we?
Yes, I think the Cup are playing on Saturday.
The 22nd
at Kellyville.
22nd of June. To the 14th of June. That's the following game. Yeah, at Kellyville. So up against the Warriors, first versus third for the Eels here. Could be interesting inclusions to that team if Ryles wants to be ruthless. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah,
and by the way, people should get out there, because I would have said in the first 2 weeks there's been between 1,000 and 1,500 people up there at Kellyville for those lower grade games. So the people in the district are turning up to watch the lower grade football. It's a great venue. Yeah. The stand is superb viewing.
Elevated with a nice angle. It's really good, yeah.
Yeah. So I'd highly recommend people get up there. If you might be missing a week of football in terms of the NRL, but make sure you get there for that. John, by the way, I didn't mention earlier today, but how about everyone gives us a like and a subscribe on the platform that they're watching?
Old algorithm, stuff, yes, guys, yes.
Yeah. And also shout out this weekend, John, the number of people that have come and introduced themselves and said, that they're, read TCT or listen to the podcast or what have you. So both up at Kellyville on Sunday and then today at the club. And look, my apologies, my recollection of names, I'm an old bugger now. Like I'm getting old, and sometimes the names just slip there. And a couple of top blokes at the club today that came over and introduced themselves, and I really wanted to thank them for doing that, because we really appreciate the feedback and the people that say they listen all the time to the podcast or they're reading TCT, and it's when people take the time to introduce themselves and say such kind words, it means so much to John and I can't emphasize that enough, because we're just fellow supporters like everyone else. We might have a platform, but when people come up and they say, look, you know, it's great to have people there who articulate how we're feeling. And there was some very kind words too that have been said about our mate Chris Ricketts, who's been doing a great job on the podcast and also with his posts. And I do have a couple of Chris's posts that I've got to edit and get out there. And my apologies to Chris for not getting those out there at the moment. It's been a crazy few weeks. So
advertising the podcast, yeah, you've done it tough in the last couple of weeks, mate. So everyone listening knows that, and certainly have been sending their love to you. Yeah, it's
So how's the comments there? Look,
chat's looking at potential recruits. A bit of talk about the quality of the New Zealand Warriors reserve grade outfit. It is a very good team, top of the table, and they've got plenty of NRL experiences going through. Looking at it, it's going to be a hell of a game next week, and the Eels will need to be at their best. But they do come in off a win. We'll talk about that shortly. 60s, the results in the flag and the cup this week. But yeah, I think there's a bit of a consensus in chat that our bench rotations weren't fantastic today. I think that's a bit of a reflection of the late changes we had this week too. We certainly weren't anywhere near an ideal bench composition this week. Luca Moretti is obviously an integral part of that bench rotation. There's who was it in chat there? Someone was unhappy with Kelma Tuolangi's match fitness, but Kelma's been really good off the bench. So that was probably that was his first start in a while, wasn't it? Because he's been named to start for about a month now. Or ever since he came back from that suspension, but hasn't actually started. So he probably got caught up on the speed of the Dogs game there. Josh is unhappy with Dylan. Well, I assume it's going to be Dylan Brown, not Dylan Walker, right, Josh? Because I feel like Walker had more than 2 runs. Josh, unhappy with Dylan's 2 runs. Look, I was defending the halves earlier in the context of the game script. I felt like in the second half that both Moses and Brown really didn't have much to work with, and there was some talk and chat about looking to kick early. The reality is that if you're looking to kick early from 20 metres out, you're just setting match field position regardless. I think the idea to kick early, or the option to kick early, is much stronger when you're in the midfield and you're still, you're 35, 40 metres out from your line, and the 40-20 is at least in play. But yeah, it's a couple of interesting thoughts there from chat. Matthias is not happy with Dory. Yeah, look, we had the concussion this game, right? I thought he played okay, but I can understand being frustrated with the being banged up in the HIAs. HIAs at least you can work with though, because that's a free, or quote unquote free substitution. But yeah, I don't know what you want to pick out from that, mate. We've got a fair bit to talk about. Anything that jumped out to you as a conversation point?
Look, not really. I think one of the toughest things about today is you had Zack Lomax with 5 errors, but that was, to me, that was 5 errors busting his ass trying to, make something happen. And I'm just trying to think of the context of some of those errors. Was it called an error then when he kicked the ball dead? When the ball came across to him.
Yeah, because can you think of 5 drops in the game? He obviously had the tap restart, the 20-meter restart, which was the bad one.
Yes, that one stood out.
The one that went over, the pass that went over the sideline would have been credited to him as an error too, because he went back and touched it before it went into touch. So that's an unfortunate one. Chat, what are we missing here? What else could have been credited to Lomax as an error? Oh, the intercepts. He had a couple of batted passes where he touched the ball. That's an error. Like, you technically are in, well, you're not in possession, but you have created an error. So, and yeah, Jaden's in chat, we got 5-6 agains, question mark, exclamation mark. Yeah. I can't figure the 5-6 agains we got, but it's one of those ones where you're getting reamed and suddenly you get a couple of late 6 again calls and the stat count gets padded a little bit. Gallagher's unhappy if Joash on the bench and Madison. Well, I don't think Madison was dropped. That's the thing. If Madison was dropped, he would have been playing in Cup yesterday, because they were very skinny on forwards in New South Wales Cup. They caught on.
I think we had a couple of late withdrawals that I think were injury related.
Whether it was viral or injury, who knows? I have to wait.
Yeah. And I couldn't get an answer yesterday up at Kellyville other than Joe Ash was in and someone was out.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't even get, confirmation as to who was actually out. And it was, the rumours were around that it was Luca Moretti that was out. But, it's really tough. And I guess the coach doesn't want to give anything away until the last possible moment that they have to. And that's understandable. You don't want to be telegraphing the changes you're having to make too early. So.
Johnny's in chat. Good to see you, mate. That was one we didn't mention. The Dogs got a 6 again for Gideon Katonga tackling someone too hard and the Dogs losing the ball backwards. That was a wild one. Yeah, smashed Galvin and they reset the tackle count. Yeah, because they claimed his hand touched, I believe.
Was it in that one that the Dogs then were complaining about a bad call going their way?
Yeah, there was someone to play the ball. That was the sequence where Brandy was on his pulpit claiming about rugby league karma for the Bulldogs, with them finally getting the ball back from the Warpen and drop. Yeah, I'm
sure that 6 again off that big tackle was just preceded that little passage of play.
That's exactly the play when I got it. Like when I was unsure about the sequence before, that is exactly how it played out. Yeah, just.
It was wild. It was like, you and I, we're not crazy about that rule when you're coming in and you're just making a tackle, and if the ball, somehow hits your hand.
You can tell when someone, like Zack Lomax played at the ball on several times to save tries. Like, it is pretty obvious. And you know what? If the touch judges weren't cosmetic features to a game and you could trust them to make proper judgment calls, they'd be able to rule on that. But what drives me crazy, and we've spoken about it in the past, is the inconsistencies. If you're making a tackle and you touch the ball on a pass, it's deemed a knock on. If you're making a tackle and you touch the ball for kick, you're not playing at the ball, because if you're charging down, it's deemed a separate thing. There's a ton of inconsistencies in the way the game's adjudicated and those sort of things. Joel's in there saying doesn't want Josh on the bench in a team that's so dominated in the ruck. Well, look, I do agree. I think that this is the first game we've been dominated in the ruck in a little bit, though. We've been up to it in our eyeballs in the last few weeks. But that is the cautionary tale of playing someone like Joash off the interchange, especially when you've got a very light bench like we did this week. I don't think you can go Walker, Sam Runny, Joash, and Dury against a team like the Bulldogs. Maybe against one of the smaller or less touted teams, Titans. We got away against Manly, I suppose, a couple of weeks back. But yeah, it's tough sledding for Jason Ryles this week, because obviously a number of players unavailable, and he was sort of forced into that situation. And I think also the frenetic nature of the game meant that he didn't have a great, maybe he had a good rotation plan, but he couldn't adapt to how the game played out.
People need to understand that this was very much last minute, because Joash had done the captain's run for New South Wales Cup on Saturday. And then I think he got a call on Sunday morning to say, to tell him to turn up for the He wasn't playing New South Wales Cup, and to turn up for the captain's run for the NRL.
Minute call-ups, yeah. So.
Yep. So this is, and of course this fits in with what happens where the NRL, they start off name and 21, and then they just got to start trimming back to 17 through the week. Is it 21 or 23 now that they name? Anyway, whatever it is, they had to trim back. So that very much impacted what Ryles could do for how late these withdrawals were. And, but yeah, Joash, look, his debut was fantastic, because we got to see him for nearly 80 minutes. And we got to see him out in the back line, and not in a position that he's renowned for playing. But he did such an exceptional job in that debut. In this one, he's coming in, he's playing dummy half in a team that is starved of possession. And he got caught with one of those tries defensively. And, I think that comes down to how much experience has he got at dummy half? Not a hell of a lot.
No. And
so, it's really...
I don't mind people pointing out that wasn't a great fit in the bench, though. I don't think you're wrong.
But we're talking circumstances with that as well. Now, I mean, let's be honest, people. Everyone would understand that the absence, first of all, of Luca Moretti was a big out for the Eels because he's been bringing so much.
Yeah.
And but the flow on from that, John, is that Jack Williams, instead of playing on an edge where he's been doing all that damage, is now playing in the middle. And we've seen Jack Williams on an edge is a weapon.
Jack had that one bad error too. Dylan Walker with that gorgeous outside-inside shape.
Yeah.
And the Dogs had the man in the bin. And he had Sexton beat to the
He was into space.
He had Sexton beat to the gap. He gets the ball in, gets the left arm defend. That was a rough one. But the other player who, and I know that listeners and watchers will not be sleeping on it, but I think that a lot of people outside of our circle are sleeping on it. Sam Tuivasa. He was really solidifying himself on the bench as a key rotational big man for the Eels. And his absence, because of syndesmosis, has really hurt us. And the Eels have played some fantastic football without him, don't get me wrong. This is the sort of game where you need a Sam Tuivasa just to get that sledgehammer through the ruck. And he would have been a very valuable player to have off the interchange this week.
Yes. Now, John, have we got any questions there from our viewers?
What do we got? So people talking about the upcoming Titans game and how important it is to win. Agreed. Chris Hill saying that Canterbury seems to be a really bad match for us. They're just too fast. Yeah, look, the Dogs, and you guys weren't privy to it in our preview today, but we're talking about that. The Dogs just play at a suffocating pace. They actually miss quite a few tackles, more tackles than you'd think, but they turn up in waves, and we saw that again tonight. They play at a high level based on fitness and effort, and that's where Serrato's taking a team that don't have all the championship pieces, I would argue, even with the acquisition of Lachlan Galvin right now. All the championship pieces in a individualistic sort of perspective, 60s, but they are playing championship football. A championship team rather than a team of champions, as the old adage is. What do we got here? Peter Z is looking at Tamaro Martin, 60s. Could be a reasonable pickup in terms of the stopgap 6 solution that can also cover another spot or two. Clark Kent asks, how is Latu and T Brown, of course, Tiank and Brown, progressing? Well, as our chat would have seen, Will Latu, one of 2 back rowers to re-sign for the club recently. Club getting on the front foot there, and hopefully the first of a real flurry of news on that front. I am got my finger, well, not confirming on wood that the club is being very proactive here and have a few more announcements to make in that regard with all our talented juniors. And
can also say, like, because the other extension that was there was Josiah Funaiuta, who's also a back rower.
Yeah.
And John, I thought the standout player in Jersey Flegg yesterday was Dom Destratus.
Yes, yeah, Dom, absolute
also a back rower.
Yeah,
and if I really want the club to sign him. The club could well argue with me and say, "Look, we're absolutely flush with back rowers." I'm telling people right now, Dom Destratus will play NRL.
He is an absolute goer, and he is.
It's his work ethic is through the roof.
His work ethic is through the roof, and look. Whenever I make these player comparisons, I do want to stress I'm not saying that X player will turn out like Y player 1-to-1. There is a bit of Britain Nakora to how he runs his angles. He has such a good feel for his angles and his timing, and he's worked really well with Matthew Hunter, with Lorenzo Talatiner, I think, too, as well. He's got a great feel for his halves partner down that edge. And on top of that, like you said, phenomenal worker, does all the 1%ers, really good talent. And
can also say as well that the Jersey Flegg yesterday was like a ridiculously high-scoring game. Yeah, it was 40 mate, it was like trying to blog that and to keep up and to have a blog of any substance was near impossible because of the amount of scoring that was going on. What did it end up? Was it like
44-36? Yeah, Eels prevailing by 8 points in the end. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
Just an absolute triathlon. And it was a bit of an SG Ball grand final rematch there. A number of players on both sides from that game out at Leichhardt a few weeks back.
I just wanted to say, John, in that game, the the Roosters were giving the Eels right edge a bit of problems.
Yeah.
So what did Jordan Rankin do? He took Dom from left edge, back row, and played him at right centre to shut down the issues there.
Dom's played on both edges in both centre and edge across the number of years now. I think he's played lock here and there as well. Been incredibly versatile. We got Gallagher asking us how old is Dom, and obviously his twin brother Raf too. I think this is their final year of flag, right? I'm
not sure. It's either their final or either their last or second last year. I'm not sure off the top of my head whether they're turning 20 or 21.
But the other part of the question going back from, was it Clark that asked us about both Will Latu and Tiankin Brown? Big T back from injury. I know it was high scoring, but I thought that both he and Damascus had some real impact in this game. And the fragility of the edges wasn't really their fault, I guess, with both teams exploring both sides of the field with great effect. But yeah, I think you can put Damascus and Tiankin down as two really good prospects as well. T made his cup debut earlier this year, got a little bit of a taste of footy up there. And they're another two sets of players that, as those ball players really start to infiltrate the system, I don't know what's going on for Isaac Jim in terms of his fitness. He might be injured because he was absent this week. But as we saw,
there was a game on before the flag, and I'm sure there was some. It looked like Isaac Jim playing out there. I thought, is this a development squad game? I could be wrong. It was right in the final stages when I turned up. And it was also the Eels against the Roosters in that particular game.
All happening in the blue and gold versus the tricolours.
Well, and I'm sure it looked like Lockie Kanikis playing dummy half.
So yeah, Lockie's no one that could be featuring the flag sooner rather than later. Jack Hudson's done a great job there. So has Patrick Spence. I could see one or both of those guys kicking up the cup at some point as well, getting a bit of reps there.
So I wondered whether it was a bit of a scratch game between the extended squads of both the Eels and the Roosters.
Joel, what position are you talking about? Poaching the bloke from the Roosters flag? They've got a few talented players in there.
They had a monster playing in the front row. The Seve boys, the Tule and Fanafau. I can't remember the names of the fellas.
He's saying it's Philip Lavakiao. Let me see where Philip plays. Was he off the bench? He was off the bench. Was he playing in the middle?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we saw Tule Seve carve us up in the SG ball. Another good prospect there. Fanafau, I believe, is his brother. Oh, he wasn't playing this week. Okay, he was named there, didn't play in the end.
Oh, by the way, John, shout out to AJ from the league scene.
Good mate, AJ. Yeah, league scene.
Yeah. So he was out there. And believe it or not, John, he was on New South Wales Rugby League officials duty. So he was doing timekeeping.
He mentioned that he helps out there, yeah. So
yeah.
Look, the timekeeping is the one thing we can't complain about, I suppose. So good of him to find the one gig that I'm not upset about when it comes to officials. AJ, great value, obviously. Supports the wrong team, but for the right reasons.
AJ's got a future. AJ's got a future in this game.
Like the TCT touch of gold, mate.
Yeah, he does a great job on the league scene. He does a great job calling games for Bar Sports. He is also contributes to Rugby League Project as well with the stats there. And, now helping out as an official for New South Wales Rugby League. Phenomenal. Like he's, he will go places. So a shout out there to AJ, mate. You probably don't get a chance to listen to this podcast, but
still sending our love to you, mate.
People need to give him a bit of love, whether it's follow him on his socials or send that appreciation for the calling job that he does with the games, because it's not an easy job calling games, and he does a fine work.
Gallagher asks, any chance of luring Trey Money back from the Raiders 60s? Look, we've been talking about this one for a while now.
Yeah.
He seems content to just be circling the drain on the edge of first grade at the Roosters. Talented young man.
You mean the Raiders?
Sorry, Raiders. Talented young player and obviously a Parramatta junior, but he has not been able to lock down a spot at the Raiders program. And obviously they're playing great football this year in the hunt for the premiership. But yeah, I don't know. They seem to be able to sell to him a vision in which he is not a consistent first grader, but stays at the club. So more power to the Raiders. I'm surprised he hasn't looked elsewhere, but again, whatever they've sold to him has been good. Peter asks us, what happened to the Eels player signed a few years? LeBron Tuala. I think he's gone back to Queensland. Did he stop by the Bulldogs?
No, I have a feeling is it LeBron. I think LeBron's running around for Hills Bulls in Ron Massey Cup.
Yeah. Good young. He's actually a really, really good young kid. We had a chance to meet him a few times, but
he might be part of that.
Canberra Two Boys,
with
maybe?
that, he might be part of the Roosters system through. Like he might get called up to Norths through the.
It gets a bit complicated with
Hills Bulls.
Yeah, with the way it works with some of the pathways now.
Yeah. John, I'm just going to give a quick shout to the gallery just to say get your 3, 2, 1s in now because we're about to give our votes on.
I did see our
3, 2,
good
1.
mate Chris Ricketts talking about needing you back on Tuesday for the news podcast to lift the standards, mate. They slipped. I got to be honest, they slipped this week. We tried our best, but it was rough, wasn't it, Chris? We did what we could. He also is in chat asking about how Tuivasa is tracking. Is he still 3 to 4 weeks away? I did hear. Look, I can't. I don't know if it's a good lead. I did hear some murmurs of positive news in that front, but as a cynical Parramatta fan, I would expect him back exactly where the club says, if not later. But we could certainly use him if we get him coming back a game or two ahead of schedule. That would be massive for us, and it helps change the complexion of our interchange. Because he was really hitting his stride. Any points in chat now? Deb, on sort of an injury front, is Bowie back anytime soon? I believe, I just had the injury report open. I believe he's scheduled for rounds 16 to 18, I think. Quite an open window there from the club. But he had the fractures in the foot, right? I think was his injury. Where is he? That's late mail. Where is the injury report? There he is, round 13. 1 week ago. Is there round 14? There it is. So Bowie Simonson listed for round 16 to 18 in his expected return window. And that's with the foot injury. You got Sam Tuivasa listed at round 19 with an ankle or syndesmosis injury. And then, we're not going to see Artie again this season with his knee. And Dan Keir did his hammy round 17 to 18. So,
Dan's expecting to play next week.
Okay, so that's a boost to the New South Wales Cup team. And, I mean, I wouldn't be seeing forcing his way directly into the NRL team 60s, but good player to have on hand. Regardless.
And Hayes hasn't been listed.
No.
Because Hayes has been out injured. I
don't really know how he hasn't been listed. He's part of the top 30, but...
Yeah. So I think he might be a couple of weeks away as well. I think he's getting close to a comeback. Tungor didn't play as well. So
we had a ton of late scratchings in the Cup this week.
I can't emphasise strongly enough just the fact that the Eels are suffering from a lot of injuries across that full-time squad.
No Woody and no Mattielli because of suspensions. You had Tungor, you had obviously Papa Lee coming out because of the call-up to NRL, so the back line had 2 blows there. Then you had, we had Benny Valu and Manny Luke playing this week. That tells you how deep the depth chart was tested. But yeah, and with Sam Walker playing, the Cup actually engineered a win. Very tough first half, 4-0 at half time, but they end up prevailing 28-16. So good effort there from our boys.
And that was, I think, from memory, 2 late tries from.
It was 73rd and 78th minute to really put some respectability to that scoreboard. The Eels were in complete control there. So well done. And then we mentioned Flegg, but they got up in an absolutely psychotic game, 44-36. So very close to the sweep this week, boys. Unfortunately, the NRL results went the wrong way. Chris, before we go 3-2-1s, Chris Hill, any news out of the Origin team announcements? Well, on the Queensland side of things, no problems for Parramatta, even though we have the bye, so it wouldn't have been an issue in that regard. But certainly no Eels named. And then for the New South Wales team, just looking at it now, Zack Lomax in the number 5, Mitchell Moses in the 6, and it looks like Stefano Utoikamanu has won the spot on the bench to replace the injured Warrior Mitch Barnett, Burton, Kalamatangi, and Lindsay Smith. Well, I know he played for Australia last year, but he's been pretty ordinary this year, but Laurie doing Laurie things there. So it looks like the Blues keeping it pretty straightforward to their selections here. And the Eels will be without Zack Lomax and Mitchell Moses during a bye week. So
yep. Let's go to the 3-2-1s now, mate.
Ones,
so
yeah.
what's your 3?
3-2-1 for me, mate. Let me just pull up the game quickly because I've got a gut feeling. I just want to quickly check. But yeah, look, torrid effort here. It's a lot of guys that busted their backsides. You look at Zack Lomax, nearly 200 metres, but had the unfortunate errors. If I had to pick out a play that I felt really influenced the flow of his contest, the one that probably made the biggest difference, and statistically not an incredible game, but I felt like Dylan Walker came on and really had the Dogs stretched. Like he was asking a lot of questions through the middle. And
yep.
I know that numerically when you look at the runs here and you only see 60 metres from 8 carries and 35 tackles, 5 missed, it's not the prettiest stat line, but in a game where the Eels really struggled to ask some questions because of the field position, I think the one player that did ask those questions probably was Dylan Walker.
Yeah. I'm struggling to think of a standout. So I might surprise with who I go for my 3 points, John, but I'm actually going Riley Smith. And the reason I'm going Riley Smith is his work rate was phenomenal. I think you might be able to confirm this. I'm sure he made over 50 tackles.
Yeah, 58 tackles, 4 missed, so still an effective tackle rate there. That's really solid.
And that was in, about 60-something minutes?
66 minutes, yeah.
In 66 minutes. I mean, it was just a phenomenal effort. Again, he was applying, he was just finding little effort areas, and they pop up all the time. Like there was one where a ball went loose and he just went sprinting across to dive on that ball to prevent the Dogs from getting possession in the Eels' half. I think that was in the first half that
big
happened.
commando roll. Yeah.
Yeah. So just lots of efforts like that, and in a match where the Eels didn't get to show much in attack, so it was all about effort areas, especially in defence. I had to find him with the 3 points for that. Who gets you 2 points?
I had him today as potentially the most important player on the field, and he was asked to play big minutes because of the context of that small bench. I thought Junior really toiled hard and had a really nice try involvement for Dylan Walker. So I'll give the big fella the 1 point, 2 points, 1 point going elsewhere. He still got to 100 metres or close enough, 34 tackles, good work rate, some key involvements. I think with a better balance in the team that wasn't facilitated by the forced selections this week, he could have really taken over in his second rotation. But Ryles leaned on him for the entire first half, and I think that sapped some of the tank. Well, I think it very understandably sapped some of the tank. So, yeah, I'll go for Junior.
Yeah, I'm going for Junior as well for my 2 points for all the same reasons. I find, look, the effort areas from the forwards were massive, and he offered also that little bit extra in attack, so he gets my 2 points. Who gets you 1 point?
1 point. The man with the toughest individual assignment this week. And I thought he did not to say that his opposition number didn't get his runs in because he's a phenomenal talent, but I thought Shawn Russell was really good. I thought he spotted up against Stephen Crichton, had a great high point of the ball in the second half to defuse a dangerous bomb, had a couple of really strong runs. Still, look, the Dogs really pressured hard on him defensively and jammed him to cut off his time to find Adokar. But I can see that combination still growing and it's not at its final form. And for a guy that has been very much maligned by a segment of the fan base across recent years, I think he's really enjoying a career year 60s. And you've been banging the drums on this one. He is... I would drop Will Penasini right now before I drop Shawn Russell. That is where I'm at with what Shawn's doing down the left edge. I think he's been really solid and tasked with such a big matchup against Crichton. I thought he did really good.
Yeah, and it was great to see that catch today.
Yeah, got
from
up
Shawn.
there with the high point. Yeah, really good.
Yeah. Now, a shout out to Scott Wisemantle, the
The turtle.
assistant coach, the turtle.
The ninja
turtle. Scotty has to put on that turtle pad when they're practicing the high Aussie rules type catches. And
next time you see him, ask him how Leonardo, Raphael, and Michelangelo are doing. And Donnie as well.
Yeah, but for anyone that hasn't seen it, it's this. I would suggest it's probably a pad that was developed for AFL, and it extends from down the back of the head and neck, and then comes out across the shoulders, and it is literally like a turtle shell that the staff member wears, and then the ball's put up high, and the players in practicing the catch climb the back of the person wearing the padding. But of course, they're bumping into that person all the time. So they're just standing there as the target for the people to come in, literally like knees first, because that's how they're climbing, like with their knees and legs to get up on the or hips to get up on top. So Wisey's not. I'm sure he's not fond of that time in the week when when he gets jumped on. But we saw the reward for that with what Shawn was doing.
Was some great
now, I want to give a shout out to Mary Kay with this, because she was saying it during the game today that if she was giving a 3-2-1, Shawn Russell features in that, and I was finding it hard to go past Zack Lomax for a point because of just his efforts.
It's so easy to have unfair standards for someone like Zack, isn't it? Where he's at 200 metres, and you look at all the great. I mean, the defensive play to set up the Mitchell Moses intercept try. Like we haven't even talked about that. We talked about the intercept for the Dogs, the wherewithal to bat that ball up, race to the sideline, secure it in the field of play, and then find Moses in the next couple of steps. Great, yeah. So I went with Shawn Russell just because I thought he battled hard against the best centre in the game, and really gave as good as he got. But I could definitely understand giving a point to Zack Lomax.
Yes, but I am giving the point to Shawn Russell.
Hey, nice.
Because, and for all the same reasons that you just did, because I'm setting a higher standard on Zack Lomax.
I'm sorry, Zack. You're a State of Origin superstar, mate. If you don't have your 200-metre game without scoring 2 tries, no points for you this week. But Zack busted his backside.
Yeah, and because Shawn is, he does get unfairly targeted. People think, he should be unloading here, unloading there. And there are the odd occasions where I think, a pass would have been warranted. But more often than not, he is making a safety call with it. And it's actually common sense a lot of times where he doesn't release the ball, because he could have thrown the ball a number of times today, and it would have been an even bigger disaster than what we were having.
He's going to unleash the fox in the midfield at some point near in the future. It's going to happen. The effort to track infield and force the error out of Stephen Crichton at one point was huge. I thought he had a great game. Just looking at chat there, a bit of talk about recruitment. I feel like we always talk about recruitment, don't we, 60s? It's one of those pressing issues. And I think it started with Gallagher, and there was someone else that mentioned it too, and our regulars just trying to thumb through and find it. Essentially, the idea was that if we don't recruit well this year, will there be scrutiny on Mark O'Neill and Jim Sarantinos?
No, look, I just want to touch on this at the moment. These fellas for the Eels at the moment, the ones that we've recruited for this year, who are really contributing well, I don't think any of them were on the player market at this time last year. Maybe Zack Lomax, who we secured because he basically wanted out of the Dragons, and it was a highly publicised period of time where he wanted out, and where we were the club that he targeted to come to, and that all happened before BA was sacked as well. But around this time last year, if you have a look at some of these players that are doing a great job for us at the moment, like the Fox, for example, and Jordan Samrani and Jack Williams, and just this whole host of players that weren't noted as being out there on the market, but they became available. And then Dylan Walker, who we picked up in round 4 or whatever it was this year. The market's just completely different at the moment. And I don't know how many players at the moment who are technically free agents
but we
for next year.
Negotiations, exactly. Whether it's Parramatta or elsewhere.
We would necessarily chase. You know, there's like when we're now talking about 5'8" options, the question has to be asked, are we happy now with the options that are internal compared to who is actually available? I would argue now, yes, that there's options worth looking at within our system. But for me, we probably could do with a middle forward, most definitely. And you might want to look at a number 9 who is, if they decide they're not going to retain Joey Lussick, and I'm not sure what's happening with Brendan Hands, but maybe you would look at a utility 9 as well.
I think utility 9 is a pretty important recruitment target. We've got some good dumb halves in the pipeline, but
maybe as well an outside back. But
let's not play the blame game of recruitment. If you're going to pin it all on Brad Arthur, I'll time you out. That's just stupid. You can't in one breath say that this is on Mark O'Neill and on Jim Sarantinos, then turn around and say it's on Brad Arthur. Let's be adults.
What people need to understand is that when you've got a recruitment committee, recruitment is a little bit more complex than what people realise. And what we need to look at now, because we can't undo the past. So judge on what happens now going forward. If I'm judging what's happened for the Eels for 2025, I'm giving it a tick so far.
And that's the important part of the conversation, is that the draft, my NFL hat on there, the recruitment class has been very good this year. They've gone out and found value in young players from the Bulldogs. We obviously mentioned the likes of Samrani, Katonga, Papa Lee. They've all been value add-ons to the team. Jack Williams was a great pickup from the Sharks, and that is an important win in the column for the recruitment and retention team. Chat, please.
The other thing to look at too.
Please, chat, just stop. Like, I don't care who said what. It's a recruitment and retention committee. So you can say that Sarantino said Arthur was the person who made the last call. What happens if I told you that Arthur did make the last call, but he was given a list of players that weren't the list of players that he wanted to look at, and he still made the last call technically? That would also be true. So let's not play the blame game because it's stupid. Just worry about future recruitment. Like you end up chasing your tail when you do this.
The other thing that's really important too is what's coming through with the pathways and also the lower grades. The Eels right at the moment are going as well as they've ever gone in lower grades and junior pathways.
The pathways are thriving right now.
South Wales Cup and Flegg sitting up there in the top 4, and to be ravaged by injuries as well.
And still winning. Exactly.
And the changes that happen, like at Flegg, there are changes every week, and there are late changes as well that happen because they get impacted by changes in both NRL and New South Wales Cup. So they get a flow on from 2 grades, and they have their team list is as volatile as you'd ever get. They're trying to imagine them fielding the same team 2 weeks in a row. It's an impossibility. So that's just the way that it is. But it's a measure of some of the players that are coming through at the moment for how well the club is going in the lower grades. Now, winning a lower grade competition isn't going to get you an NRL premiership. But if you're producing NRL players, which it's looking like the pathways are moving closer towards, then, it makes that job for recruitment a little bit easier. It maybe makes retention a little bit harder. So it's a double-edged sword with that. So if we're judging recruitment and retention, let's also judge that retention part with some of the younger players. Now, what I can tell people, I can't give them the actual names, but I can tell people that there are significant players in the Eels pathways that have been extended on longish term contracts. So the Eels have locked them up.
I mean, that's good to see the club kicking the ties and preventing opposition clubs from moving. And the reality is that
absolutely,
we are going to lose a player here or there in the coming years. That's going to hurt us because we are flush with talent. That's what happens. We saw it with Penrith. But yeah, it's good to hear that the club has been on the front foot here. And I can understand fans looking for a big signing after missing out on Lachlan Galvin and what went on there. And that could still happen, like you said. We had in chat people popping in saying that they've got, sources that the club are looking at Tino Fasu or Mala Awi. Obviously, David Fafita's not happy at the Titans either. There's talk that Patrick Carrigan could be on the outer at the Broncos, or it could be a player to make way potentially if there's a shake-up. There are going to be opportunities to strike, and it does suck missing out on Lachlan Galvin because he was
maybe one of those, John. Maybe one of those names could have a bit more than smoke, but. Yeah, I'm not going to go into that, but the thing is, rugby. If I've been taught one thing this year, it's that nothing is definite until the signature's on a piece of paper, and the unexpected can happen. Dylan Brown was never going to leave Parramatta. He did. He was never going to leave, but he did. Lachlan Galvin was always coming to Parramatta, but he didn't. And I can't express those two things more than what the players did themselves.
Yeah, but things change
and that's
quickly.
the point. That's the point to understand. And there's plenty of people that spoke to both of those individuals and know that that's the case.
Yeah, it's the reason you were standing your ground on both those fronts was that they've been very good mail, and like you said, things change so quickly in the NRL, and I'm not going to prejudge the recruitment retention team. I think they've got a very big tick next to their name for their 2025 recruitment. 2026, obviously, there's a lot of stuff to happen, and the reality is the Eels have the war chest, and the product on the field is helping their cause. I think that what Ryles is doing, I know the wins haven't always been there, but even the way that the commentators spoke about the lead up to this game and how the Eels have elevated themselves in the last 6 weeks, it is starting to trickle through the code. And that's going to help. The center of excellence helps. All this stuff will add up. And I think we have to – I know that we're going to be talking about recruitment almost every podcast because I think one of the Justy boys sort of put it in there that it's all we can really talk about right now on the back of the loss. And that is the sort of season – look, not overarching season message, but it is certainly one of the dominating talking points is we've got so much cap space. We've got the spots. We're a building team. What is the club going to do? I'm going to give them the time here to work. And I think that with Jason Ryles there, with the R&R team there, that they're going to get to work. So let's wait and see how the fluid situations change elsewhere. I think you've got really volatile situations at Newcastle, at the Gold Coast. I don't know who you want from the Knights, to be fair, but the Titans only got a couple of forwards I'd be happy to poach. Brisbane seem to be on the edge of their coach and their playing roster. Which way is the club going to lean? There's going to be cap pressure across other clubs that we haven't spoken about. So there's going to be opportunities. And let's wait a couple of months and see where we're at. And if we haven't recruited well by the end of all that, then yeah, we can start getting the knives out and start being aggressive.
Yeah, and as I said, look, what 40 just said is true. It's going to be a very volatile player market with unexpected players out there because of things like issues around coaches, issues of salary caps, clubs that start to agents that start to agitate on behalf of their player that they want a longer term deal at the club that they're at, or because there's probably something going on in the background where another club is prepared to come in with a big deal, and you end up like like what happened with Gutho, who was contracted with us, had that opportunity for a longer deal because of the agitation by his agent and himself for the Eels to stump up an extended offer to keep him there. and we weren't prepared to do that, he moves on. And that's the sort of thing that can happen out there in the player market. But as I said, retention is going to be, I think, one of the biggest challenges, and a bigger challenge maybe than recruitment for our Eels, based on the number of emerging players that are there. And just the final thing I wanted to say about today, John, today in many respects as well, when it came to, errors and where we were our own worst enemy, it was really symptomatic of a team that's still finding itself.
Yeah, like we scrapped,
and we're seeing all the positive. Yep, we see all the positivity that's there. We saw so much resilience out there today. Make no mistake, by the end of the game today, the Eels were out on their feet from the amount of work that they had to do in tough conditions. It sucks that we lost that one. It sucks that we made so many errors. It sucks that we had awful officiating at times during the day today. And I hate losing. I get sick of losing. I don't want to see our team down near the bottom of the table. I don't think we're a bottom of the table team, but we're a team that's got so much more that they have to learn and to get right to be a team that challenges for anything higher. You can almost, sense that we are on the cusp of it. But, the reality is that this is probably going to be that learning year.
Yeah. Well, as we said in other podcasts, when we reflect on this season, there's going to be damn near a dozen games we're going to say, wow, we could have won that. Like, we were in it, but, X, Y, or Z thing went wrong, or if only this had happened. I think that's going to be the story of this season. And whether
then by the end of the year, John, there'll be teams that won't want to be playing us in the last 4, 5, 6 games of the season.
The last 6 weeks have already trended towards us being one of those, dare I say, if we don't get enough wins, going to be one of those bogey teams for potential or would-be finals contenders. But yeah, I really do like what Ryles is building, and you can see the players responding. They didn't fold tonight. They got flooded and drowned in possession and territory. Maybe a bad choice of words considering some stuff we've seen in Australia this year, but they got absolutely done in by the Bulldogs and the referee too. And yeah, they end up conceding 30 points, but they defended to a literally falling off their feet. And
John, just quickly, was there any consensus in chat about the threes?
3-2-1s? Jeez, I've got to go back up. Yeah. Chat has been pumping out the content tonight. What do we got? I think I saw Azara Yongi featuring a fair bit, which is a fair shout. I thought he tried his backside off there. That sequence where he cut down Bronson Sherry, who tried to run over the top of him, and then got back next play to save the kick in behind was fantastic. And a sign of a young player who's given it his all. He did get gobbled up by Crichton at one point. Again, a reflection of just how good Crichton is defensively to cover that ground and throw him into the touch. Where are our 3-2-1s? Sorry, chat. Jesus, you guys did talk a lot. Oh, my God. You're yapping nearly as much as us, chat. Well done. We got Matthias going junior, Dylan Walker. Did you give a one, Matthias? I don't see one. Going up a bit more. Sean Cronin. Good surname there, Sean. Iyongi with the 3, Walker with the 2, Shawn Russell with the 1. I like that selection there. It's good. We got Philip saying Calvin 3, 2, and 1. I saw more of him on the coverage than anyone else. Yes, very good. Very good. I tell you what, the Galvin coverage was approaching Hainecam territory stuff for the Titans, wasn't it? It was completely out of control. We got Damien saying Walker 3, Junior 2, Iyongi 1. Another fair set of selections there. Deb doing what we couldn't do, giving Lomax points, going 3 for the big fella. Walker 2, Iyongi 1. Again, very reasonable spread of points there. Clark Kent, Superman, saying Lomax 3, Iyongi 2, Jack Williams the 1. We got David Calgara going 1 for Iyongi, 1 for Lomax, 2 for Iyongi, 3 for Walker. Carl Vadrasco going 3 for Junior, 2 for Walker, 1 for Russell. Yep, I like that. Jamie going Iyongi, Walker, Lomax in that order. So, yeah, look, a lot of consistent players featuring there, so I think chat having a good read there. Michael just posting his now. And Mitchie. Okay, we've got fresh 3-2-1s. Excellent. Mitchie going Iyongi 3, Riley Smith 2, Shawn Russell 1. Michael Byrne going Iyongi 3, Junior 2, and Dylan Walker 1.
I tell you what, I like Mitchie because I was starting to feel like a shag on the rock in being the only one that had mentioned Riley Smith in the 3-2-1. I'm thinking, have I seen a different game?
I suppose the intercept living on with some people there. And look, we can argue about whether Burton was onside, and I think there's a pretty good.
He wasn't.
Pretty good.
He
basis,
wasn't onside.
Pretty good basis to argue.
No, John, hit the stinger one last time. One last time.
Serious, man. You cannot be serious.
I suppose even so, you could argue that Riley could have just hit the big dummy and go. But yeah, look, Riley toiled and toiled. A lot of great defensive efforts there. The big commander rolled dive on the loose ball. He couldn't have done much more. So I think fair mention there for the points. Mitchie also making a great point. Imagine how Tigers feel watching the Galvin build up. I imagine there would have been some West Tigers fans throwing up in their mouth from Fox Sports today. It was relentless. Someone there was who was it in chat that said we're looking at Stafford Toa? I thought he re-signed with the Tigers.
No, I think they were cutting him.
Were they?
It wasn't the latest. Yeah, I'm sure it was.
Because he's a little bit mercurial, but he's had some good games for the Tigers. Comments on contract extension rumors? No, thank you. So he's there were reports that he re-signed, but he's now rejected the reports apparently. All right.
Yeah.
So, okay, one to watch there. Would be a pretty handy. Not depth because he'd be competing for a frontline spot. It'd be a good competitive pickup, I suppose. Yeah, I don't mind Stafford Toa.
So, John, I think that just about brings us. This is a bit of a longer instant reaction than normal. I think we're heading towards the hour and a half mark, which is unusual for us for an instant reaction. But we turn it around tomorrow with the news podcast because tomorrow is Tuesday. So we'll be seeing people tomorrow. Thank you to our sponsors, star partners, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, and also Paraleagues, the home of the Eels. Thank you to everyone who's joined in today with this live podcast, the people that are listening on one of the other platforms on delay. We will always appreciate you listening, watching, and giving your support to TCT. Apart from that, stand by for all the content this week. John, thank you. And as I always say, go you mighty Eels.